You can memorize every verb ending, every tense, every rule in the entire grammar book, and still freeze the second a real conversation starts. Meanwhile, the person who is actually speaking fluently, the one having the easy, relaxed conversations, usually studied way less grammar than you did. That is not a coincidence, and it's definitely not because they're smarter than you. It's because grammar is not learned the way almost everyone is trying to learn it. There is a way to build grammar that actually shows up when you open your mouth, and a way that just fills notebooks and leaves you stuck. Most people pour their hours into the second one. The good news is that the fix is genuinely more fun and a lot less work, and I will even point you to a free way to check whether your current study time is actually moving you or just keeping you busy. But first, let me show you why the grammar first approach quietly backfires, because once you see it, you will stop feeling guilty about the drills that you have been avoiding. Okay, so here's how this usually goes. You buy the app, the textbook, or the big intimidating grammar workbook. Sometimes these masquerade as just language books. You fill in the conjugation tables, you can recite the rule when to use the past tense versus the other. On paper, you look like you're making real progress. Then you get into an actual conversation and none of it is there. Someone asks you a simple question and your brain starts flipping through the rule book, trying to assemble the one sentence, the one rule at a time, and by the time that you've built it, the moment is gone and they are just staring at you. You knew the grammar, you simply could not use it. And that gap between knowing a rule and being able to use it at speed is the whole problem. So be honest with yourself for just a second. How many rules can you explain perfectly but not actually speak? And again, this is not your fault because the advice everywhere is basically the same. Master the grammar first, and then you'll be able to speak. Learn the rules, drill them, and one day it all comes together magically. It sounds so responsible and so rigorous. Grammar feels like the serious grown-up way to learn a language, and just listening and reading feels almost lazy by comparison. But that instinct is exactly backwards. Grammar first treats a language like a subject you study, like history or math or something that you learn about. But a language is not a subject. It's actually a skill, like driving or playing an instrument, and nobody in history ever became good at driving by memorizing the driver's manual. This blind spot, pouring months into the thing that feels productive while the thing that actually works sits untouched, is so common that I built a quick free tool to help you see which side of the line your routine is really on. And I'll point you to that in just a second. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the neuroscience and what's actually happening in your brain when it comes to grammar. So here's the part that almost nobody points out. You already speak at least one language fluently, and you cannot explain most of its grammar. You could not sit down and list every rule that you follow each time you talk, and yet you basically never break them. So just sit with that for a second. You are a flawless expert in a system of rules you were never formally taught. So how did that happen? You heard the language, you understood it, and over thousands of hours, your brain quietly pulled out the patterns on its own. That is what the brain is designed to do. It is a pattern detection machine. The grammar rules in a book are just someone's attempt to describe those patterns after the fact. They are a map drawn of roads that were already there. And here's the big pit that everyone falls into. Studying the map is not the same as knowing the roads. When you try to speak by recalling rules, you are consciously firing each step of something that is meant to be automatic, like trying to walk by thinking about every single muscle part the instant that you speed up. Real grammar doesn't live in the front of your mind where all the rules are. It lives in your gut as a feel for what sounds right, and the feel is built by input, not drills. So here's a pill that I want you to swallow. Your goal was never to know the grammar. Your goal was to not have to think about it at all. Fluency is not being able to explain why a sentence is correct. It's a feeling instantly that a word just kind of sounds off. It's the same way that I love apples sounds completely normal to you, but me, apple love, sounds broken without a single rule for you to check. You are not trying to stuff your head with rules. You are trying to build an instinct here. An instinct is not memorized, it's grown by hearing and reading the language used correctly over and over until the right patterns simply feel normal and the wrong ones make you wince and cringe. Every rule you will ever actually need is already living inside the sentences you understand. You just have to meet them enough times for them to stick. So with all this information, what do you actually do instead? Three things. First, flood yourself with input that you can understand, where you are following the story or the meaning, not trying to decode rules. This is where the patterns come from, so this is where the bulk of your hours should go. Second, notice. Do not memorize. When you see the same structure show up for the 10th time, just let yourself feel the click. You don't need to name it or drill it into some sort of table. Repetition inside real, meaningful contexts wires it far deeper than any worksheet ever could. And third, use grammar as a light touch-up, not a foundation. If one specific pattern keeps tripping you up even after you've heard it plenty, then that's the exact moment that you might want to do a quick 2-minute grammar explanation, and that can be pure gold. You look it up, you get a little aha, and you go back straight into the input. Grammar as a spot fix after after input works beautifully. Grammar is the main event before you have really heard the language is the thing that keeps you stuck for years. Now, here's the pushback that I always get. So are you saying that grammar is useless? Just never study it? No, that's not it at all. Grammar study is a fantastic tool in the right place. When you have already heard a pattern 100 times and something about it still seems a little fuzzy, a clear explanation snaps it into focus almost instantly. And further down the road, a bit of polish can clean up the mistakes that slip through. Grammar makes a great reference and great finishing touch. It just makes a terrible foundation, and even worse, starting point. The order here is everything. Input first, so the patterns are already half familiar, and then a light rule to sharpen them. That idea that the right things in the right sequence is honestly most of the whole game, and it's exactly what we obsess over in my program so that people stop drowning in rules and actually start understanding and speaking. Because here's the bigger truth that this all comes down to. Fluency is not actually about knowing your language. It is using it without thinking. And every hour you spend drilling grammar rules in a workbook is an hour you are not spending building the one thing that actually makes you speak, which is your instinct. So starting today, try flipping the order. Get understandable input first, let the patterns sink in on their own, and keep grammar as a light touch-up it was always meant to be. And if you want a quick and honest gut check about whether your current routine, all those hours you're putting in, is genuinely building that instinct or just keeping you busy, I made a free method audit that scores exactly that. It's linked down in the description. It takes about 2 minutes, and for a lot of people, it really is an eye-opener. If that's something that interests you, you can go ahead and try that after this video. Either way, from today, stop studying your language and start absorbing it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.